What is Passover? The Passover story begins with the Israelites being enslaved by the Egyptian Pharaoh. God appoints Moses to lead his people out of Egypt and to freedom. When Pharaoh refuses to release the Israelites, God inflicts 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt. The final plague, the death of the firstborn Egyptians, spares the Israelites because they mark their doorposts with lamb's blood, a sign for the angel of death to pass over their homes. After this plague, Pharaoh relents and allows the Israelites to leave. The Passover story is not only a historical narrative, but also a rich source of spiritual lessons and traditions. During the Passover holiday, Jewish people observe various rituals, including the Seder meal, where the story of the Exodus is retold, and symbolic foods are eaten. These traditions are meant to remind participants of the struggles of their ancestors and the joy of liberation, fostering a sense of gratitude, resilience, and communal identity. When is Passover? The holiday of Passover, or Pesach, falls on the Hebrew calendar dates of Nisan 15 to 22. Passover 2024 begins before sundown on Monday, April 22, 2024, and ends after nightfall on April 30, 2024. Passover meaning. Passover is a special holiday that Jewish people celebrate to remember a really important time in their history. A long time ago, Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and Passover is about commemorating how they became free. The name Passover comes from a part of the story where something called the angel of death passed over the houses of the Jewish slaves. They were spared from a terrible plague because they marked their doors with lamb's blood, as God told them to do. This was the last of 10 plagues that happened in Egypt because the Pharaoh wouldn't let the Jewish people go. After this last plague, Pharaoh finally agreed, and the Jewish people were able to leave Egypt and slavery behind. So Passover celebrates freedom and the strength it took for the Jewish ancestors to stand up for themselves and become free. During Passover, families have a special meal called a Seder, where they eat specific foods that remind them of what their ancestors went through and tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. It's a time for them to be together, remember their history, and appreciate their freedom. Passover in the Bible is a pivotal event that marks the liberation of the Israelites from centuries of Egyptian slavery. This story is primarily found in the book of Exodus, chapters 12 through 14. Passover begins with God's instructions to Moses and Aaron in Egypt on the eve of the Israelites' departure. God commands them to have each Israelite family slaughter a lamb and mark their doorposts with its blood. This sign was to protect the Israelites from the final plague, the death of the firstborn in every Egyptian household, a divine punishment for Pharaoh's refusal to release God's people. That night, as the angel of death passed over the houses marked with blood, the Israelites were spared, leading to the name Passover Pesach in Hebrew, signifying the passing over of these homes. The rapid departure of the Israelites followed, with no time for their bread dough to rise, resulting in the eating of unleavened bread, or matzah, a practice continued by Jews during the Passover holiday to this day. After witnessing the severe loss, including that of his son, Pharaoh finally relented and urged Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. However, Pharaoh's heart hardened once more, and he sent his army to recapture them. As they reached the Red Sea, with the Egyptian army in pursuit, God parted the waters through Moses, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground. When the Egyptians followed, the waters returned, drowning the pursuing army, marking the final liberation of the Israelites.